Welcome back, folks, and welcome to the sixth unit, which will be about database. What is database? When we say database, what do we mean? Basically, in computing, database, it is an organized collection of data stored and accessed electronically. Small databases, they can be stored or they can be handled and stored on a file system, while large databases can be stored or they are hosted on computer clusters, cloud storages. The design of databases spans it's a formal techniques and practical consideration, including data modeling, efficient data representation and storage. Maybe even it should contain query languages, security, privacy, sensitive data. So every famous company and every company in our business, it should have and it must have a database. It should be, of course, a place where to even store their information, to be the storage of their information. There is something called a DBMS. It's a database management system. It's the software that interacts with end users, applications, and the database itself to capture and analyze the data. This is a software, of course, depending on different kinds of databases that you should use or that you consider to use. There are, of course, many types of databases that we will discuss in the next video. Mainly, we have something which is called SQL and non-SQL. This will be the topic of our next video. And this was generally an overview about what is even a database. So I will see you in later videos to discuss different types of databases. Welcome to this part of the unit, everyone. What we are going to discuss in this part is mainly the difference between what we call an SQL or the NoSQL kind of database. What's the main differences between them? They are both databases. On which one a company will rely more. This is, of course, depending on the type and how, which means the way the company wants to use its data. We try to narrow things down with the main points. Of course, when we go further into details and syntaxes, it will be even more clear. The thing over here is that, of course, we will make this table available. The first point, which is the data storage model, how the data is stored in SQL databases, the data is called with something that we call row and column. The data is being stored as tables. These tables are fixed with rows and columns. In the NoSQL type of databases, this is different. They have the JSON format. JSON format is not based on rows and columns. It is mainly based on keys and values, which means JSON format in NoSQL comes as the following. It has the key and it has the value. This is what you mainly find in NoSQL databases. This is even more famous in MongoDB and in rather all the NoSQL databases. This is regarding the data storage model. Of course, in development history, SQL was before NoSQL. We are talking about the 1970s where SQL databases appeared, and the NoSQL databases appeared in the 2000s. They were a big plus for the data world because NoSQL made itself as an open source. They were free, no fees to download. Examples of SQL, the famous Oracle, we have the MySQL. There's also the Microsoft SQL Server, the PostgreSQL. Of course, there are many more, but these are the most famous ones. In NoSQL, we go to MongoDB, which is the #1 NoSQL around the world because it is totally free and it is very easy to use. DynamoDB, HBase. Also, we have the MariaDB. So as we say, there are much examples about them. The primary purpose for each kind of database, the SQL, it's general, while the NoSQL, it has general purpose, but it has key value purposes, which means that large amounts of data with simple lookup queries. So when you are using the JSON format, the queries would be very more simple in order to extract information that you want to use. The schemas of SQL are rigid, while the NoSQL is flexible. The scaling is vertical because, of course, we are talking about rows and columns. The scaling in NoSQL is horizontal. The asset transaction, they are supported in SQL. Most of the NoSQL, they do not support the multi-record asset transaction. The joins, which mainly is the most important part about the differences, is that in SQL, they are required. Joins operations are required in SQL, but they are not in NoSQL. This also, the least to say is that it has its advantages and it has its disadvantages. Of course, with these main points that we discussed further till now, I think the benefit goes more to the NoSQL, and also it is based on when the company wants to actually spend money on their database, whether they are using simple ones or they want to use larger ones, because as we said, NoSQL is totally free. Data to object mapping point, it requires the ORM, which is the object relational mapping in SQL, but in NoSQL, they do not require the object relational mapping. Like the example of MongoDB documents, they map directly to data structures. So in most programming languages, whether they were in Java, Python, C, they map directly to the structure of the data. There is no object relational mapping over here. So these two types of databases, they have their advantages, they have their benefits, they have their disadvantages. Many programmers, maybe they would rather go to the NoSQL because it's free, because it's open source. And when we say that something is open source, which means it's out there in the market, and many programmers on maybe many libraries, they can enhance, give better suggestions. So these are all points to narrow down the differences between SQL and NoSQL databases. In the further on examples in the videos, we are going to use SQL. Hopefully, we will get to see an example of NoSQL also using MongoDB, and the differences maybe between the syntax of SQL and the syntax of NoSQL. So we will start on our tour in the SQL Developer in a few. In this part, we are going to get a bit familiar with something which is the SQL Developer. So this is the software that we use. It's the interface that we use. It's free to download. You can go just to Google, type SQL Developer, and you get over here from the official website of Oracle, Oracle SQL Developer downloads. So you press on that. So because you want to download it, and of course, you can simply choose the operating system that is suitable for you based on what operating system you are using, and you simply press on download. You will get, of course, the installer of this SQL Developer, and you will install it in a very normal way, which will not affect anything on your PC. It may need GDK. Of course, it needs GDK on your laptop, but like this package, it has the GDK 8 included. You can update that, or you can leave that as it is. Going to this interface of Oracle, this is your interface. First of all, when you download this program, you will see that this is your welcome page. First of all, this is the interface. It is also something very easy and friendly to deal with. You can go into your shortcuts from here. Okay, so I'm gonna exit that because mainly what you need is the following. You have over here a test database, which will be by default installed when you install SQL Developer, or you can simply create a new database from File, New Database Connection, and then you can go ahead and just create it. This test connection that will be, of course, normally a database will be found over here in this part when you install the software. So when you go inside that, this is for testing purposes. It will be loading. When you open it, when you expand it like that, you will get two over here, let's say sheets. One is the working sheet, which will be where you can enter your queries. And the other one is the query builder. So we will be maybe working on this worksheet. Over here, there are many information inside this database. They are all of the information that you might need. Also, it might have tables inside it. So these are tables, some tables that we created, some tables that already they exist that you can query on. So I'm gonna leave the syntax part for later on, but mainly this is the interface, and this is how we view and we control our data. Of course, this database is connected to somewhere, but we will see that connection later. And let me just maybe not discuss what does this query do, but just to show you maybe a result. This is the start button that executes this query. And when you do, you will see its results over here. So it will be like maybe a terminal in Visual Studio or anything that you might consider. It will show you all of your results just beneath the working sheet where you typed your query. So I think this is mainly the main stuff about our sheet. Of course, over here you have all of the options that you can do. If you go over here to test and you go for the properties, you can actually see this stuff. You can set a username and password for your database. It has an ID, SID, which is XE in this case. The username and the password, you may need them to connect this, to maybe connect this database to a certain IDE or web page that you are working with. This is how you test your connection later on. It says success, which means your connection it can be established. So this is all for the interface. And of course, we are going to go deeper in the syntax in the SQL queries. How do we type them? What does each query mean? What are the main queries, the popular queries out there, and the most queries that you are going to need in any project that you use database in. So we will catch with that up in later videos. Okay, everyone. So I'm going to start from scratch in this unit. We're going to create a table that I got. It's a customer table. This table has the ID, name, address, city, postal code, and the country of our customers. So how to do so? This is the command, as we said. So to create this table, you can go on SQL Developer and create table, and let's say customers. This can be case sensitive or not. Both ways, it will apprehend the query. So when you want to create a table, you cannot just give it the name and stop. You have to open up these parentheses and give at least the columns. So what are we inserting inside this table? So customer ID. So let's make it like that. Customer underscore ID. And this customer ID, let's make it typical. It is, you have to actually put the type of the information that you want to enter. When we say information, which means this table, it has these, let's say, keys values. If you remember, we said these in NoSQL, but in SQL, we are talking about rows and columns. So the first column is the customer ID. The customer ID is a number, so it's an integer. So over here, when you say customer ID, next to that, you have to say int. So it's an integer. Then, comma, put another one, which is customer name. Let me just copy that. So we have customer name. It's going to be varchar and 255, like spaces of what you want to type inside it. And this is how you go further on for the others. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 left. These 4, I'm gonna create 4 copies of this one. 2. So you can come to the line here to still make it readable. So customer ID, customer name. The other one was the address. So the address is also varchar. This closes over here. Next to the address, we have city. So it will be like that. Also varchar, close parentheses here. Then I think we have postal code and country. Now postal code, this is integer. So it goes like that. And finally, country also goes for varchar, and we close the main parentheses, which is this one of the table. So this is the query responsible to build up this table. We should run it. Table customers, as you realize over here, it says that table customers has been created. Great. So where do I see my results? Of course, over here inside your database, you can refresh. So let me just close it. I think it does that automatically. Okay, so sometimes when you open and close that, it should show on your new table, but you can simply click on refresh. This one, you see when we refreshed, customers appears over here. If we click on it, we can see that it's still empty. It has a customer ID, name, address, city, postal code, country, but you see the types and yet there's nothing. So this is how we create this table. So I'm gonna copy this, go to Word and just say one, create the table. I'm gonna put the comment over here. So this is the comment. Okay, let's read the table. So to read the table, simply you say select everything. Select star means select everything from, you say from where? Destination, which is the customers table. So we run the query. This is where we can see our columns, which are customer. They are actually the name and address, city, postal code, country. So we can expand these a bit to see all of the word. Okay, that's good enough. And this is how we read from our table. So I'm going to put this command also over here. Select star from customers. So until now, we saw how to create our new table. We saw that we should not create the table without at least without the columns, because you cannot just say, I want to create this table and leave it empty. It should have some columns. Of course, now we are going to insert some data into these tables. But the first step was creating the columns and giving each and every one what is its type, which means that this column is only going to have integers. So later on, if you try to put something else, it will reject it. Same thing goes for the bar chart, which will be 255 of character length. So our target is to fill now these data inside our table. So we will see that, of course, later on in all of the videos. And also this example will be at your disposal. We thought that it might be more readable to give you guys these commands separately, encouraging you to try and code these stuff with us, because when you try or when you start in the SQL query development, when you start on writing queries, mostly all of the queries, they are simple, they are similar. Once we catch the logic, later on, all of the examples will be debatable and will be very easy for us to accomplish. So I will see you in later videos to see how to insert our data inside our table. Okay, everyone, welcome back. So we created our table, we created our columns. Now we wanna fill up the tables with some rows. So the command to do so is actually very simple. It is insert. So we are inserting. When you type this command, you will see some suggestions. So we are inserting into. It's not case sensitive, of course. Into customers, this table. You have to precise which columns are you inserting into, and they should be in the same order. So the first one is the ID. Then we have the name. Then we have the address, comma, city, postal code, and the country. So I'm telling SQL I want to insert inside these columns these values. So now we will say values are, we open and we can get our information, we can copy them. So I'm going the easy way. Okay. And we should put a comma over here between all of the values, and the varchars, they should be inside a single quote because they are varchars, just like that. Now you can do multiple. You can just go like that, open a new one, and get the extra information. This is it's not mandatory to do, but sometimes it doesn't work. It is considered actually to save time. Okay, so it's when you do so like that, but I actually prefer doing them just to make sure that everything is okay. So you run, and then you will see that one row is inserted. So let me first of all get this one. Insert data. Now you have two ways. Either you can go over here. As we see, when we open this table, it will show up over here. Let me show you. It has the columns, gives information about the columns. Now it has the data. You can see now inside the data, we have an ID 1, customer, address, city, postal code, country. This part over here, the model, it can show us the model of our table. We still have this only schema, but if you want to see the model, you can go maybe to another table, which is the jobs, and you can see its model, see the relationship between them. Okay, so this is not what we're talking about. So this is our table. It has actually many options to do so. So these are our data. When we refresh, we see everything inserted. Okay, so now I'm gonna replace these with the next two. So it's the same way. Again, we put a comma to separate one from another. These are for the bar charts. You have to respect that. Okay. Okay, this was Mexico. And again, we run. One row inserted, a new output. We come to customers, we refresh. This is our new record. We still have one. Okay, so this is actually very simple. In here, again, same logic. Okay, run the query, and we should see didn't actually run, so I'm gonna select it. And one row inserted, again, customers, refresh, we see our third row inside the data. If we close this and we want to see our table now, we can always select star from customers, and we can run that. And this is our created table, and our inserted data are inside them. Now, you see something by default over here, SQL Developer, it gives every row a numbering. So the ID, it can be something over here, I don't know, like if it's a university ID, it's something long. So this is the numbering of the rows. It's the same of the ID. We should differentiate them. These are created by default by SQL Developer. So this is how you insert data into your table. Later on, we are going to see how to modify data inside our table. All right, everyone, welcome back. Until now, we created our table, we inserted our data, we tried to read from our new table, our data. Now, how to read from this table using an SQL query, but what if I don't want to see all of my data? What if I partially want to read? Maybe I just want to read some of the data which satisfy a certain condition. So this is what we are talking now about, a condition-wise. A condition-wise means that if this condition is satisfied, it will display for me the information that satisfy this particular condition. How to do so? Let's say that for the first one, for my first data, the country name is Germany. So I want to print out, or I want to read from my table only the customers who are from Germany. All right, so it will be something very simple. We just have to stick to these steps. So we will say select star, because we are selecting everything from customers. Now, previously we saw that this query, when we run it, we will see all of our data. Okay, so let's continue to a condition. We will say where what, country, because I want my condition to be depending on the country. So this is how things will go, where country will be equal to Germany. So this is the end of this query. If we try to run it, we will only see one record. So it will only display the information that satisfy this condition where the country is equal to Germany. This is how we can partially search. So let me get that in this document. Partial search according to the country equal to Germany. And this will be our query. Okay. If for the same example, I want to see the address of this customer who lives in Germany, I want to see his, let's say, specific address. We are selecting everything which is regarding the country which is equal to Germany. So I just want his address. So in the place of select star, we can put select, and here it is, address. So we will see that the address is Aubrey, which is the result of this query where we are selecting from table customers the customer who has the country which is equal to Germany, and we only extracted his address. So this is also a partial search according to the country. So I'm gonna put this over here. And you can always satisfy any type of partial search if you know what is the, let's say, the main target that you are searching for. So this is what we call a partial search. This is where we are extracting some information from our table depending on a certain condition. This certain condition in SQL, it is well been said as the where statement, where the key is equal to this value. So this was the partial search, everyone, and I will see you in fewer videos for more syntax. All right, everyone. So I want to talk in this part about something also regarding to the partial search, but what if we are dealing, or we are, let's say, referring to more than one condition? In an example, now in this data, we were talking about the country, which is Germany. But if we said that the country is Mexico, in my data, I have two tables. Let me do that as select star. We have two records which have the same country. So I want to distinguish them, or I want even to add more condition to make my partial search more precise. So there is a syntax over here called and. You know, and it is an addition. and it means that the left side and the right side, they both should be satisfied in order to get the search. So I'm going to say that whose customer ID is equal to 2. Now I'm going to perform this query. Now it is more, let's say, specific to this exact record where the customer ID is equal to number 2 and the country is equal to Mexico. So this is the AND, the addition to, let's say, a certain condition to make it more specified. Like the AND, we have also the OR. Now the OR, it behaves, let's say it's not the AND, because when we say AND inside a condition, which means the left side and the right side, they both should be satisfied in order for the query to succeed. But when we say OR, at least one of the two sides, if it was satisfied, then the query will succeed. So this is the main difference between OR and AND. Of course, it will be depending on your condition. How are you searching? How are you performing your partial search? So if we run this condition over here, it will give me again the customer ID 2 and 3. So it will give me the two records where at least one of the two sides is satisfied. Also over here, if we are referring to the country as well, and we say that this country is again equal to Germany. So either it is equal to Mexico, either it is Germany, and we perform this query, it will be just the same as select star. So we are selecting right now all of our data. Of course, if we had more data inside the table, more than these three records, maybe a fourth one with a different country, then this query will just perform all of these three records will be our results. So mainly that's it with conditions and partial queries. We still have one thing, which is the ordering. It is also something very simple. Let's say that we brought out this result, selecting a star, where, or, and let's say I want to order them. So order by, let's say, postal code. Okay, so this will be an order by the postal code. I'm gonna run. And you see that the changes that happened over here is that customer ID number 2 is now the first one, depending on the postal code, which is the minimum. And then comes the, let's say, the next one and the largest one. So this is depending on the postal code. Now, by default, it is ascending. You can realize because it is from the least to the largest. But we can also do order by postal code in descending order. So we can do both ways. By default, it was ascending. Now we precise it to a descending order, which will give me from the largest to the least value. Okay, so I'm gonna put this also over here. And this is the descending syntax. And of course, we have ascending. Ascending is the same as the default case. I'm gonna add it also. But it is mainly the selected one by default. So I hope this was easy for you guys. We still have how to delete a record from a table. So we'll be discussing that in the next video. Okay, everyone, welcome back. So before we delete, we want to ask something. But if I want to change one of the existing records, which means Inside this record, I have this customer ID, which is equal to 1. He decided to move. So he wanted to, let's say, change his address or his country. How to do that? So this is the update statement. This is also very simple. It is update. What are we updating? We are updating customers table. This is the first, let's say, syntax. We set, what are we setting? We are setting country equal to, let's say, I don't know, France. Now we are setting this country is equal to France and changing the city, which is Paris, to whom? To which record or to which customer, to which user? So this also now needs a condition where customer ID is equal to 1. So for the customer ID, which has ID number 1, which is this one, what happened is that he moved and he changed his country and his city. Now, if we run this query, we will see that one row has been updated. So let's name that as we are in 4, 5. Updating customer with ID 1. All right. So if we refresh our database, we come to customers. Okay, this is the old one. Let's open it again. We will see that for customer ID number 1, the city is now Paris and the country is now France. If you come over here and you try to read it, you can select star from the customers table. Here it is, the first record, city is Paris, country is France. So we updated this information for this particular user to be able to see his new, let's say, address. So this was how we update. Now, if you want to delete a certain record, it is also a very simple syntax, which says, let's say I want to delete. So it goes delete from customers, from the destination that we are deleting. Who are we deleting? Where, of course, now this will be a condition. Let's say I want to delete the third one, or let's say where postal code, because this one was delivered, is equal to 5023. Okay, so we will run this query. We will see that one row is deleted. Refresh. So let's say that this one is deleting customer with postal code equal to 5023. This is the query. So it was deleted. As I said, I refreshed over here. I'm gonna update this table. We go to data and we see that now we have only 2 rows. So the third one, which had the postal code of 5023, it was actually deleted. So if you come over here and select all from the customers table and we run that, okay, we will see the same result of the data over here, which was that the row which had the postal code of 5023 was actually deleted from our table. So I hope this was easy for you guys. These are simple queries, simple syntax, but of course they are very useful and they are the actual life examples of using SQL. So I will see you in later units to discuss more topics.